Happy February. It's snowing, so I'm using the snow background. Today I felt like telling you of a time when I was a complete moron. I had just started Scratch and was not familiar with all the blocks. I was experimenting with the change size by and size percentage blocks, which I don't use very much because of this incredibly scarring experience. I set a sprite size to 110%, and then when I tried to change it back to 100%, it wasn't working. Oh no, whatever will I do? The Scratch blocks aren't cooperating. A month later, I finally figured out my tragic mistake. I was using the volume percentage block instead of the size percentage block. How did I mess that up? I mean, the blocks don't look at all like each other. They both are pink or close to pink and have a box where you can type in a number. They don't look anything alike. Wait a minute. They look exactly alike. Why, Scratch Team? Why must you torture me like this? How dare you assume that I'm intelligent enough to tell the difference between pink and purple? If you can't tell, I'm joking. Well, at least partially. I can tell the difference between pink and purple, but the blocks do kind of look the same, you have to admit. And with that filler out of the way, time for an announcement. Tomorrow is a holiday, and most of the holidays so far, I've done a special themed rant for it. So, Groundhog's Day is no different, and you shall be expecting me to be complaining about the logistics of Groundhog's Day tomorrow. This has been Billy Nutger's Rant, and I hope you've enjoyed. It's Groundhog's Day. Everyone's favorite holiday, I'm sure. If you don't know what Groundhog's Day is, then I'll explain it quickly. Groundhogs hibernate, and they wake up in February, I think, and so people see if the groundhog sees its shadow when it comes out of its hole or not. And if it sees its shadow, then that means that there's more winter. Or something, I'm not entirely sure. There are multiple things wrong with this groundhog prediction. First of all, it's pretty hard to see a shadow in snow on a cloudy day, so if Groundhog's Day falls on a snowy, cloudy day, like today, then the groundhog's probably not going to see its shadow. Hooray, no more winter! Except for the fact that the groundhog couldn't see its shadow because of snow on the ground, so that most likely means there's going to be more winter. Second of all, if the groundhog is facing towards the direction of the sun when it comes out of its hole, then it's not going to see its shadow because the shadow is behind it. And fourth, why choose a groundhog as the animal for this holiday? Groundhogs have one of the most inconsistent names because they can be called groundhogs, whistlepigs, land beavers, woodchucks. Basically anything goes for these things. Are there not other hibernating animals that only have one name? Groundhog's Day is such a strange holiday. It makes no sense. But it is a holiday celebrating a cute rodent, so not really much to complain on. This has been Billy Nutger's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Big news, guys. 2 new Scratch extensions are currently in production, and they're amazing. The first is another extension that uses the webcam. Unlike the first webcam extension, instead of detecting motion, this one detects faces, and you can attach sprites to different parts of your face. It's a bit silly, but it's also amazing. And the face detection technology isn't even a joke. It's like really good. It can even detect drawings of faces. It's definitely a lot better than the first webcam extension, because this one's actually fun, unlike that one, which was kind of just meh. The second new extension is the big one. It's the most exciting one. It's the text extension. Wait a minute, isn't there already a text feature in Scratch? Well, yes, but it's nothing like this one. This one types stuff on the screen. So you have a sprite, and you can activate text mode, and it changes the sprite into text. So you can go from having text that's typed out on the screen to having a sprite with only one block. It's so amazing. And there's even a way so you can have a generic platformer type of text. You know, the text that goes, it just types out one letter at a time. You can do that with this extension, and it's amazing. You can even change the text to be rainbow text without a single costume. In my personal opinion, I think that the text extension will be almost as good, if not as good, and useful as the pen extension, which is saying a lot, I know, but I truly feel this way. I love this extension so much. The webcam one, however, it's amazing, but in a different way. It's not practical, it's just silly. You can try out these new sections using the Introducing Scratch Lab button on the homepage. This has been Billy Nutger's Rant, and I hope you've enjoyed. It's finally time to talk about the worst feature on Scratch. Worse than the built-in tutorials, worse than the robot effect, worse than generic platformers, worse than all of that. I'm talking about the What's Happening section of the homepage. The What's Happening section is a box where you can see the people that you're following and what they've been loving and favoriting and sharing. I'm pretty sure sometime in the past I've already talked about manipulating it in your favor, but this time I'm actually going to talk about the obvious problem with it. And the problem is chance. If you're following one person, there's a 100% chance you'll see their activity in the What's Happening tab. If you follow two people, there's a 50% chance that you'll see what they're doing in the What's Happening tab. And the What's Happening tab only has 5 slots, so your activity could easily be overwritten by someone else that your followers are following. The fact that a person loving and favoriting a project has about as much significance as a person sharing a project that they've worked for hours on is ridiculous. So if someone follows you, and they're already following 200 other people, guess whose projects they're going to see? Not yours. According to the Scratch Wiki, stuff that appears on the What's Happening tab is sharing a project, remixing a project, loving a project, favoriting a project, following a user, following a studio, becoming the curator of a studio, being a manager of a studio, adding projects to a studio. So it's not just loving and favoriting that can overwrite sharing projects. It's all this other stuff, really. Come on, Scratch. For being all about community, you sure don't care about the community that much. Here's my proposal. Either A, keep the What's Happening tab, but only have sharing projects be in it, because really no one cares about any of that other information. Or B, do what YouTube does and have a notification system. Come on, guys. Scratch 4.0, notification update. Let's go. And the fact that studio activity appears in the What's Happening tab is just ridiculous. I'm probably going to do a whole rant on studio activity soon. You want to know what else is ridiculous? The amount of times I say ridiculous every episode. Like, really? I can't think of any other synonyms. This has been Billy Nudge's Rant, and I hope you've opened your eyes to the flaws of the What's Happening tab. If there's one thing Scratch is known for, it's generic platformers. You know, you go to the Explore tab trying to find fun games, and you just see a bunch of the same thing. You try making one yourself, but you get bored halfway through. But a detail some people miss is that generic platformers explain Darwin's theory of natural selection.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard you say, and I was here since episode 9.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said too. The easiest shape to make in a generic platformer is to have the player be a cube, jumping on cubes. Since cubes don't have slopes, it makes it easier for collision. But having a game full of monochrome cubes is not visually appealing at all, and so people wouldn't like those kinds of platformers. Until one day, someone, probably, thought of a genius idea. What if we make it more person-like? Give the generic platformer cube an eyeball. Wow, what an idea. The eyeball generic platformers were more appealing, graphically, than the ones without, so they became the normal thing. And then other things were added like particles and pastel colors, just to further heighten the experience.
If you're supposed to be trying to persuade me to like generic platformers, it's not working. The single screen levels are too short and the scrolling platformers are too long. Not to mention the fact that the jumping physics are just plain boring. Not to mention the fact that platformers have the most stupid names of all time, like blank, a platformer, sun, a platformer, trees, a platformer, grass, a platformer, air, a platformer.
Yeah, I know that, but that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that majorities decide which is a better platformer, causing the genre to evolve over time, to fill the needs of those people. And it's still happening today, just like evolution in real life. Does that mean that I don't want the generic platformer to go extinct? No, of course not. I, like most people on Scratch, still don't like generic platformers. But the people that do, do. And so they get to decide what happens with them. Fans of generic platformers are the mother nature of generic platformers. This has been Billy Nudge's Rant, and wait, even I'm confused. What sense did any of that make? What was I talking about? What was I thinking? Hi, today I'm going to be talking about some things you should know if you're new to Scratch. I know I usually talk about the useless parts of Scratch, but today I'm actually going to be talking about some useful things that you can use. The first useful tip is if you want to animate a background, don't actually make it a background. Make it a sprite that's put in the back layer, because you can't use motion blocks on backgrounds. For some reason, you can have graphic effects on a background, but not motion blocks, because that makes total sense. Okay, next tip. If you're going to use the glide block, make sure that it's for a very short duration, because otherwise it looks incredibly slothful and not fluid. If you're doing an animation, before sharing the project, watch it through a couple times to make sure that you didn't forget anything. And also, if you're new to Scratch, try to stay out of the green operators block section, because not even I know how it works. It's just a bunch of math blocks. The multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction are useful, but the rest, I'm not smart enough to figure out the rest. So unless you can figure it out, I suggest that you don't use them. And to make your projects nicer to look at, make sure that all of your sprites have the same line thickness consistency. I'm not sure what else to call it. Just make sure that all the outlines are of the same length. And don't use the tutorials button in the top left corner of the editor, because those tutorials are completely ridiculous. Instead, if you need tutorials, go to the Explore tab and filter tutorials. The tutorials made by other Scratchers are far superior to the tutorials made by the actual Scratch team. And one final thing, if you have a lot of sprites, be sure to title them, because nothing's more annoying than figuring out that Sprite 10 was actually supposed to be Sprite 13. This has been Billy Not Just Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Happy Lunar New Year, everyone. I'm not exactly sure what Lunar New Year is, but rather than do a couple Google searches to figure out what it is, I'm just going to not risk getting anything wrong and just say, have a happy Lunar New Year. Today's topic is going to be reporting, and by that I mean mass reporting. It seems every other project on the Explore tab has been taken down because it's been falsely reported. Luckily, I've never been on the Explore tab. I'm pretty sure I'd be taken down faster than a chicken in a wrestling match. Why are projects being taken down for being reported, you may ask? Well, because people are jerks. They're jealous that they can't be on the Explore tab and get famous, so they just take it out on other people and just take down their projects. What's even more ridiculous is that when a project is taken down, it still shows up on the Explore tab. Just when you click it, you get an error message. So it's not even like you're freeing up room for yourself. What were you thinking, reporters? I say, the only projects that should be reported are those that shatter the community guidelines. And I don't mean like slightly infringe upon them. I mean like monster truck through the wall, destroy the community guidelines. Or maybe they should just remove the reporting projects feature altogether. Is that not a good idea? No, that's a ridiculous idea. But something that isn't ridiculous is reporting comments, because most of the time comments are meaner than actual projects. And it takes almost no time or effort to write a comment. But making a project that gets falsely reported takes a long time. But really, it's not a big deal if your comment gets reported. Like, oh no. Anyway, reporting is a very powerful tool. Don't misuse it. This has been Billy Not Just Rant, and I hope you've enjoyed. Let's talk about aesthetic projects. Everyone probably knows what aesthetic projects are, but in case you don't, they're projects that you manipulate to add to your profile, to make your profile look nicer. You know how when you favorite a project, it goes to your profile under the favorite projects section? Well, if you favorite a bunch of aesthetic projects, then they go to that section, and it looks nice. Now, I've been saying aesthetic projects, but there are also aesthetic studios, which are better. Here's why. For one, if you favorite a project, and it goes to your favorites page, eventually you're going to favorite other projects, and it'll push the aesthetic project out of your favorites list. Out of your visible favorites list, that is. So unless you never favorite another project ever again, then the aesthetic project isn't going to last long. But the real reason I love aesthetic projects is that it takes a useless feature on Scratch and makes it useful, just like I've always wanted to do. Curating a studio gives you messages from that studio, which are annoying, but you're still part of the studio, so it's a worthwhile trade-off. However, following a studio gives you the messages from the studio without the benefits of being curator. What a pointless feature. Here's where aesthetics come in. If you have a bunch of aesthetic studios, and they form like one cohesive image, and you follow all the studios in order, then you just turned a completely useless feature of following studios into an aesthetic for your profile. Wow. If you're an aesthetic making person, and you're watching this, thank you. Thanks for turning something useless into something cool. And for those looking to put a more permanent aesthetic on your profile, just remember that following studios is usually better than favoriting projects. And for those of you who make aesthetic studios, please disable the comments, because whenever someone comments, the person who's following the studio and has your aesthetic will get a notification, and the notifications are annoying, so please disable comments. This has been Billy Not Just Rant, and I hope you've enjoyed. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. I hope you like pink and white, because I'm sticking to a color palette today. I'm also going to be talking about a feature on Scratch that I like, instead of the usual talking about features on Scratch that I don't like. And wow, when was the last time I did that? Literally yesterday. Were you not paying attention? In my opinion, one of the most fun and useful blocks in Scratch is the graphic effects block. Whirl, fisheye, and ghost can either look goofy or cool depending on how you use them. The mosaic effect, however, well, we don't talk about the mosaic effect. Ugh. No, only positive things today. Like the move steps block. It makes the sprite move in the direction that it's pointing. Pretty simple, pretty useful. Until you realize that the sprite was facing backwards in the editor. Ugh, that's so annoying. Ugh, I did it again. Yeah, you're right. There's definitely at least one feature on Scratch that has nothing bad about it. Of course, the best thing about Scratch are the Scratchers. They're the ones that fill Scratch with projects. So many projects, however, that most of them go unseen. So I say this Valentine's Day, go to the Explore tab, and filter by newest projects. Give some random Scratcher, who just started, 11 a favorite. It'll really make their day. Actually, I already think I've told you to do this before. I don't remember when then. But yeah, there's too many people on Scratch who will never get noticed, and it's sad. So notice them. And if you love a favorite, and if you love a favorite project, and it goes to the What's Happening section, then other people will see the project, and they might want to love and favorite it. I cannot speak English. I think I'm allergic to all this pollen in the air. Ugh. This has been Billy Dutch's Rant. Go share the love. Today's topic is going to be topics. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. I mean that the topic today for my rant is going to be about the Scratch team's topics for design studios. You know, the special studios that are released every so often that have a specific topic, and if you have a project that fits in that topic, you can add it to the studio. And everyone wants to be in those studios. Who can blame them? The current one is In the Air. Pretty general. I'm sure most people have a project that takes place in the air of some sort. But what's really annoying is the people who just make a project with that theme in like 10 seconds and then add it to the studio. Actually, you know what? Forget the design studios. Those aren't bad. Those are perfectly acceptable in terms of quality. You know what isn't? The studios section of the Explore tab. Because with how the Explore tab works, the only studios that will ever get on there are either overused aesthetic studios or those studios that ask you to spam all your projects in them. The number one studio on the Explore tab is Unnoticed Scratchers, which is an add all your projects thing that apparently, when you add your projects, you're supposed to get a lot of attention, which is actually a lie, because so many people are adding projects that I doubt they'll ever see yours. They don't care about giving attention to other people. They want it all for themselves, which again, makes sense, but it kind of defeats the purpose of the studio. And I like having things in order, so when aesthetic studios get on the Explore tab out of order, it's kind of obnoxious. Or when only one part of an aesthetic studio gets onto the Explore tab. If you didn't know what an aesthetic studio was, you'd just be like, okay, great, it's a single word, studio. That's a bit weird. And how is the Eating Glue studio still in the Explore tab? Why, Scratch Team? I complained about that already. How hasn't it been taken down yet? I think that studios should be a community effort, not just telling people to eat glue and add all their projects. So ridiculous. I mean, like, a kid comes home from school and the mom's like, what did you learn in school today, sweetie? Oh yeah, I was in computer lab and I learned how to eat glue on Scratch. The Explore tab never runs out of content for rants. Speaking of rants, this has been Billy Nutter's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed.